Oh, sorry. Okay, let's call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. And our first order of business is a presentation by Hazard, Young and Attia Associates on strategic planning. And welcome.
Well, we have Pat.
Pat and Sarah.
Yep.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are
For joining
smiling
us this
under our
evening.
masks. And we assume you are too, right?
All right.
And I think Lori Kimbrell, she's also with your group, isn't she?
Yes, that's
There we are.
correct.
Okay.
There she is.
Great.
Hey, everybody. I'm Lori Kimbrell. So are we going to start with strategic planning, or did you want to start with search?
Doesn't make any difference.
We're here. Should we start the search?
Whatever you'd like.
She has our PowerPoint, I think.
Yep, she does.
Queued up. Okay.
We'll start with the search. And I sent you a copy of the PowerPoint earlier today.
Mhm.
There we go. Great. Well, again, good evening. I'm Pat Newdecker, and this is
Sarah Jerome.
And we'd like to just introduce ourselves for a few moments before we start the formal part of our presentation. And good evening, Dr. Anderson, good to see you again. Sarah, do you want to go ahead?
Certainly.
We're very pleased to be here tonight and to talk to you about the work that we look forward to doing with you. In addition, we'll tell you a little bit about the background of what brings us to you. I'm an experienced educator of 46 years. 23 of those years are as a superintendent, 15 in Kettle Moraine and 8 in Arlington Heights. I also had some wonderful experiences at the national level as president of AASA, the American Association of School Superintendents, and had that wonderful opportunity throughout the nation to have interaction with people from every state. And that also is something that Pat brings to the fore. We both have had the wonderful opportunity of serving in districts that care deeply about children and their development. And we see that in McFarland as well. And so we see a compatibility that we can bring that matches your interests. Pat?
Great, thank you. And as Sarah said, I'm Pat Newdecker. We are friends and colleagues. I have been an educator all my life, teacher, building administrator, and most of my career as a superintendent. From Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and I retired from there about 6 years ago and continued to do some work in higher ed, designing a program at the Milwaukee School of Engineering, an MBA in school leadership, and then also some work at Alverno College, redesigning their educational administration program as well, and continuing to teach online courses for them as well as supervise, or advise, I should say, doctoral students at Alverno. So as you can see, we, even while we were formally retired, we continue in our field, and both Sarah and I have been doing searches for the past several years. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about HYA. You may recall from your from the proposal we sent you that this is a national firm established in 1987. We've assisted school boards with more than 1,600 executive searches. Our regional office, which is in Schaumburg, Illinois, has 2 full-time staff members, an executive president, and then 100 associates across the country. That's important because it allows us to access them for recruiting, as well as taking their advisement on candidates that we may be receiving. We have our presentation tonight in 2 sections, the search presentation. Sarah will walk you through the actual search process, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about us and about what we might be able to do for you.
So you'll notice that the signature search process, and I think that's where we are here on the screen, outlines 4 segments. The engage phase, the recruitment phase, the selection phase, and then the transition phase. And the first step is this engagement phase, where once you select us, then we would meet with you to set up a timeline that suits your interest in when you want to have your superintendent appointed. At that point, with working with the calendar that we've created, we launch our work with you interviewing each of the board members. In addition, we set up focus groups with your community, and you can select which groups you would like for us to work with. We meet in face-to-face or Zoom. We've had very good success with both, with either students or teachers or the staff, the parents, your community. You can select which groups you would like to see in those focus groups. We also have a survey that runs through that time period, usually 2 to 3 weeks, where your community, all of your school community, is invited to participate in answering questions about, 1, what they see as the strengths of the district, 2, what they see as the challenges of the district, and 3, what they see are the desired characteristics of the next superintendent. That feedback then is collated, and we write a leadership profile that we bring back to you as a board to tell you what we have heard from your school community and the themes that we've heard that let us know what qualities to look for in that next applicant and in all of the applicants that are coming through. So we see, in terms of the leadership profile, that you will get a report on the strengths, the challenges, and the desired characteristics of that new superintendent. And with that presentation, that ends the engage phase, and we move into the recruitment phase. And that leadership profile is then posted on the HYA website, along with directions for applications. And we set about to do our very best to recruit the highest quality candidates out there for you that match your profile. And we do that in a lot of different ways, because Pat and I have both worked in Wisconsin for such a long time and have connections in the Midwest and nationally through AASA. We have quite a number of ways that we can tap into other talent resources and bring those applicants to McFarland and to that search. So we do personal recruiting. We screen all of the applicants. We meet them generally on Zoom, but sometimes face-to-face, so that when we bring you the slate of candidates, we know who they are, we know their background, we know how they can match the profile that's been set. Once we have met all of the applicants, we bring forward to you a list of those that we think best meet the qualities that have been stated on the profile. And you make the decision. Do you want to meet all of them? It might be 10 of them. Do you want to meet 6 of them? Do you want to meet 15? I mean, we are certainly here to serve you, and will bring you the number of candidates that you would like to meet. We will also work with you on the interview process, and if you want us to be involved in that process, we certainly can be, though most boards decide that since they are developing their relationship with that potential superintendent, that they want to do that work themselves. And then we facilitate third-party background checks when you've gotten your finalist selected. So that then puts us to the next step, the fourth step, and that is the transition step. And once you have selected the person that you want to be your next superintendent and have agreed upon a contract with that person, if you would like for us to meet with you and that person in transition to help facilitate the next steps in working together, we are certainly happy to do that. And generally, the leadership profile that has been developed as a result of interaction with your school community is a good guidepost for that kind of interaction. And that brings us to the fourth stage. And then, of course, the timeline that we have developed can be anything you want. We are certainly willing to work with you on whatever you say you want to be the timeline. We have suggested some broad range dates here in terms of the engage phase being September through November, the recruitment phase November to December, the selection phase January, February, and that would then put you in February making a decision about who you would want as your next superintendent. If you want to move that up to be a faster timeline, that's fine. I can tell you that some of the applicants are a little hesitant to be early applicants because they think that if they are chosen, it might make them a lame duck for a long time if they're chosen early and they're leaving a district that's successful. So there are things to weigh before you decide exactly when you want that candidate to be your next superintendent and announced publicly. So.
Great. And we had planned to take questions at the end. Is that all right if we just keep going?
Certainly.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'd like to give you just a little more information about Hazard, Young, and Attia and some of the reasons why we think we'd be able to serve you well. And I'll go into a little more detail, but there are 6 things listed here. We pride ourselves in being a national, we have a national reach with a local approach. As you heard, Sarah and I are both in Wisconsin, but we have national connections. We have a very successful recruitment for a strong pool of candidates. We have strong engagement, especially during the recent COVID challenges. We have very high satisfaction from current searches. We have a current active pool of candidates, and as most companies and school districts, we are committed to equity and equitable work. I'd like to expand on those just a little bit. As you know, our company has conducted upwards of 1,600 searches. That's nationally. That serves small, large, rural, urban, metropolitan, all kinds of school districts with different population mixes as well. We have 100 plus associates nationwide, which will be a good network of contacts for us, and a professional staff in our office that serves as our infrastructure and backup. That takes a little stress and pressure off of your own staff, if you will. We believe, next slide, please. We share with you some of our most recent searches, and we believe that we've successfully recruited strong candidate pools for these school districts. And you'll see as you go down, beginning in fall of 19, we did some work in Green Bay. We did the search there. We continued last summer in Mapledale, spring in Whitewater, fall in Verona, most recently spring of 21 in Fond du Lac, and in Cambridge. You can see there the applicants that we received for all of those jobs, the candidates that we slated, that's who we felt was most desirable and the best fit for the profile, and the number that the board chose to interview. All of the application material is available to you. You may interview as many as you want. We just do a lot of the legwork for you after we've done your community engagement to match that with the applications. But you see all of the applications, and especially we prepare files for you on the slated candidates. Next, please. We can share our, who would have known that we would be sharing success stories during our COVID engagement, but we can tell you that we had very high participation and ease of use, not only for our online survey, but also for our focus groups and our interviews. I think we found, and it should not be a surprise to us, that Parents especially participated in very high numbers, and most likely because they didn't have to leave home, they didn't have to get babysitters. A 45-minute or hour focus group conversation was just that. It didn't stretch into 2 hours over the evening or afternoon. So we've had great luck with that. As you know, and as Sarah said, we will screen all the candidates. We meet them face-to-face or Zoom. We want to know them personally. We want to talk to them. We want to make sure when we bring their name to you that we know them the best that we can. And we will continue to support you as a board all the way through at your request for interviews or helping draft questions. We have a lot of information to share with you right up until when you hire your superintendent. Next, please. We also believe that satisfaction is a predictor of future success. And I'm certainly not going to read all of these now. You have a handout that we have shared with you. But it might be important to note that we do ask for feedback and an evaluation at the end of each search. And these are some of the quotes that we received throughout the last year and a half. The first slide there gives you especially some high praise from school board members, which you'll be able to take a look at your leisure. The next one also gives you school board members, but also the superintendents that we hired and their satisfaction with the process. We certainly work for you. You hire us, and we are here to serve you as a board, but we are also very careful to serve our colleagues as well and make sure that they are handled professionally as well as we bring them forward to you. And right up to the last slide, and just as significant, district administrative assistants. We work very closely with the administrative assistant in coordinating details. That's pretty much, I won't say all they have to do because that's a chunk of time, but helping us set up focus group times, making contacts, sending out invitations, using your website, et cetera. Everything else, all the other paperwork and forms and applications, and certainly creating that profile, we take care of. There would be no pressure on your staff for that. We have a current active pool of candidates. We stay in touch with candidates from recent searches. Obviously, we get some very, very good, very excellent candidates, and there's only one job per search. So we obviously stay in touch with them. We have, in the past year, probably connected with over 125 candidates. And as we've said before, our national network, our advertising on the web, and even if we're not chosen as the firm to represent you, we'd be more than happy to promote your position and make these candidates aware that your job is open. We might mention, too, that one of the unique features of Hazard Young and Attea is that their website lists all superintendent positions that are open nationwide, regardless of who's doing the search. They did that strategically. It drives a lot of traffic to that HYA site. People looking for superintendent jobs will most likely look there because there's a very extensive posting. Thank you. And the next one, we walk the talk of equity. Certainly in representing candidates, representing you, and having an equity awareness, if you will. We are closely associated with NABC and ALAS, the other superintendent organizations in the country that are specific to Latino administrators and administrators of color. We recruit there as well. The cost structure for our search was included in your proposal. And we just want to make sure you understand that that includes everything we spoke of this evening, including the survey. And I believe in the appendix there was a copy of the survey, a small copy of the survey report for you. That means we will host all your focus groups and your stakeholder interviews. And we also, once you determine your finalists at the end of the search, we come back and we host community forums for you, for the community to be able to meet your final candidates. Just a reminder, because we find that many school boards have not gone through a search, so if you haven't gone through a search, don't feel like that you're alone. That's pretty typical. But just a reminder that throughout the process, the candidates' names are confidential. until you determine 5 or fewer named finalists. And then those get reported out, and we'll help you with that as you move into that last phase of your process. The only additions, as listed in the contract, would be the Baker Eubanks third-party background check. Usually, school districts do them on their number 1 finalist. It's a very extensive review of things that frankly we can't get at while we're doing our initial search. It is an executive company. They do background checks on executives from across all kinds of fields. There are additional advertising packages as requested, and we can talk about those during the planning meeting if they're of interest to you. We've had very good luck advertising in Wisconsin on the HYA site and during all of our social media platforms as well. We find few, if any, school districts paying for the additional advertising. So and we can talk about that later. So that, in a nutshell, is us and what we hope we would be able to do for you. And we can either answer questions, or you can do the strategic planning part, or whatever you prefer.
Why don't we go through the question process on the search and start the rest afterwards.
Okay,
Anyone?
be happy to.
Questions, comments? Bruce?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Of the placements you have, and this is, I don't know how I'm gonna really ask this question, but, you have a national kind of reach. What percentage, and at least I guess in Wisconsin, turn out to be local or regional versus kind of national candidates?
Let me just look at our list again. I think maybe 100% of them. Let me just
Of
see.
the ones we've done in the last, I think Wisconsin seems to attract Wisconsin, if not Midwestern candidates.
Okay.
There's a lot that, as you know, in all professions that goes into moving, often children in school, jobs for a spouse, et cetera. It's not out of the question to have somebody from out of state, but most of our searches in Wisconsin come from Wisconsin candidates, and some from Illinois or Minnesota.
Okay.
I think when you look at our recent searches, Green Bay was the only one that came from out of state, and he started in Wisconsin. So there was a Wisconsin connection there.
Right. Came from Iowa.
Yep.
I have another question. I have a couple.
Sure, sure.
Go ahead.
How many of your successful, your placements have continued for 3 years? Do you have that data for 3 to 5 years?
We
Because I
do.
think that's something that, to me, is very important. I
Sure.
really want to try to have
Sure.
someone who's willing to make a commitment to stay in McFarland, as opposed to, this is a stepping stone.
Right.
So-
And that's one of the things that we would listen for when we interview each of you, to find out specifically what you are looking for. And then we recruit and we screen for that. So we are very upfront about what you're looking for. Of the candidates we have, obviously the ones that we shared with you in the last 2 years, obviously they are all still there. I've been doing searches since 2013, and every superintendent I placed is still in that position. We can also tell you, and in the contract, there is a guarantee for you, that if for some reason in the first 2 years, and there are some little caveats, like if there's a big turnover in a board or whatever. But if a superintendent would break their contract within the first 2 years, we repeat the search for you at no additional cost. We're very committed to longevity and trying to minimize turnover, obviously.
And I think another piece of that is, we don't recruit people we've just placed with you for at least 3 years. So you don't have to be worried that we're going to come back to that talented person that you've just hired,
And take
and
them.
that he's going to be, or she's going to be lured to another district.
Anyone? Christine?
Were you done, Bruce?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the detailed clarification about the applicants, and then who is ultimately hired here in Wisconsin. It sounds like the majority are coming
Yes.
from Wisconsin. Can you give the demographics of the applicant pool, and do you feel like, or is it representative of Wisconsin? So How many are women? How many are people of color? Can you talk about that?
I don't have those numbers with me, but in general, I would say that predominantly we get most white male applicants, but we worked very hard to make sure that women and people of color know about the positions and are encouraged to apply. I think that when you talk about, does it reflect the demographics of Wisconsin? Yes. I think in general, yes, but maybe not the highest percentage of women. It's not a 50-50 applicant pool.
And we can share national data with you too, that right now, women in the superintendency make up about 21% nationwide. And candidates of color, male and female, are about 10% for our African American and less than 5% for Latinos.
And so that's what happens here in Wisconsin? You have 10% of black male, black women?
Well,
superintendents.
we might, but to be honest, they will look for communities where they feel they too will be the best fit. And so they'll look at the makeup of a community as well as access to communities around you. Sarah and I believe your job is a very desirable one. You're a high-performing district, you have high credibility, you have a good reputation, and let's face it, you're close to Madison. That will be a draw. So that we will certainly recruit, but you can imagine, if I may, when those minorities are as small as they are, they too are highly selective.
So what do you, how do you work with boards then to, or what kind of practices do you encourage boards to do to ensure that if the predominant group is always going to be white male, that there isn't some bias that's going into choosing a white male? What do you do? What kind of practices do you use with a equity lens for boards?
Well, a couple of things. Again, working for you and with you, we start by handcrafting your application process. Some school districts, in addition to the application, which includes a resume and references, may ask questions. And some school boards do it so they see a writing sample. Some are very specifically looking for answers to questions or topics, and in your case, it certainly could pertain to equitable practice. When we screen for examples of work they've done, not just a philosophy and a belief. So we feel that helps a little. And then certainly when you interview, you would want to ask for evidence of their work and their ability to approach their work with an equitable lens. It's not easy work. You're wise to ask the question because of the pool that we have, but I can tell you, the superintendent's work is hard enough as it is. I think most people in the field who are current are quite aware of the need to approach their work with equitable practices.
I have a question related to what Dr. Primanella just said, and that is, and I think it really is probably addressed to Jeff, and I don't know if he wouldn't know it offhand, but he might be able to find out. This is Jeff Mahoney, and that is, what percentage of Dane County superintendents are women or people of color? I think that would be kind of interesting
And we
for us
can
to find
certainly
out.
find that for
Yeah.
you. I know we did the Verona search this year. We placed an African-American male there. Our number 2 finalist in Green Bay was an African-American female from out of state. Can you think across our pools? We did have 2 searches that had, let's see, Mapledale Indian Hill had an African-American female applicant, finalist,
And Cambridge.
and Cambridge did
was
as,
a white female as a selected final person.
and so was Whitewater. That was over a year ago, but that was a female superintendent as well.
I do think the conversation amongst board members as you enter the interview process is really important, because we often hire in our own image, and to recognize that, and to recognize that we know that children need to see people in their own image in successful roles is an important interaction when we get into the interview process. And so, you know, the old adage of you have to see one to be one, and you're talking about minority students being able to develop into leaders. We want to bring that, those leadership roles to the fore. When Pat and I were in Waukesha County, both as colleagues and superintendents, that county, at the time we were superintendents, had more female superintendents than any in the state in that county, and I think maybe nationwide, because it was a county filled with female superintendents. And we certainly did recognize the importance of that, and the working with each other, and then the networking outside of that circle.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I have a question. So I like that you talked about focus groups and surveys. Obviously, I understand that you'll send out surveys through email to a lot of the parents. But I think it's important to think about the fact that our parents have been inundated with surveys lately.
Okay.
So what are the other things that you do to get parent participation and community participation with these groups?
Well, the focus group gives us the opportunity, either face-to-face or with Zoom, to hear people and let them hear each other, which is really an important aspect of the focus group. And so that has been a really important piece of developing and seeing the themes that emerge in those conversations. I would say really valuable. The survey on the email is certainly useful too, but it lacks that ability until we give the report for others to hear each other.
And just two things as far as your disaggregated groups. You select 5 groups for the survey. So most school boards would not put themselves as a group. They wouldn't use up a group for 5 to 7 to 10 people. We do interview each school board member individually. So that would leave your 5 groups on your survey to be usually parents, staff. You can separate out your staff and have it be faculty as well as your non-certified staff. Students, you may ask students, you may ask parents, you may ask community leaders. We can craft it because basically all they do when they log in is they check which group they're answering that survey from. So you receive your data as a whole as well as disaggregated. The focus groups, of which I think we've included 10 for your school district, again, would be something we'd plan and decide with you in the planning meeting of who you would like us to talk to. And that's not set in stone. We've done more than 10, we've done less than 10. We're very, very available for that. But that's how we collect that. And frankly, we share our emails. If people feel the need to contact us confidentially, we accept that as well.
Okay.
Arlen, do you have anything? No. I've got a couple of questions here. This, I'm of the impression that, and just to confirm, are candidates that are persons of color, are they generally hesitant to apply to districts that have extremely low percentage of minority within their school population and/or community population?
Sometimes that's true.
How can we overcome that? Because I think that's been an issue here forever.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we can recruit, and again, your advantage is that you're close to Madison. You are a
Right.
metro area. I assume that's how you
Yeah.
consider yourself.
Mhm.
So your metro area with a, top-notch university is going to be a tremendous draw for you. We will recruit for that. I don't know if we can represent that population. I don't know if it's as much that they shy away from as it is because they are such a small group. They have tremendous options and choices. And so that may be a factor as well. But
Sure.
we try to overcome it in that way.
Jeff Mahoney may be able to help me here, and I'm looking at the number of applicants that you had in your successful searches. Do you limit the number of applicants?
No,
Or you just, whatever turns up, that's the number that we have to deal with, and we get through it?
Right, and in fact, well, yes, we will try and stick to your timeline. When we bring a slate to you, if you're not satisfied with numbers, quality, anything, we just keep going. The search is never closed until you hire somebody. So
Okay.
that posting will stay active. We put on the dates on the HYA website of when we'll be screening and when the board is most like to do their first round interviews. That helps people get their applications in.
Sure.
But we leave it open for all the obvious reasons, and we take applications right up until you're hired.
In terms of the timeline, your draft timeline appears, from conversations we've had with Dr. Anderson, that, do you feel like we're behind the eight ball at all in terms of time?
no, you're good.
I think you're good, and I believe through Dr. Anderson and your RFP, you said you'd like to maybe get someone in place around February?
Yeah.
And so we,
Yep.
did that and then worked backwards from that to meet your timeline. You're in good shape.
I'd say that's ideal.
Yeah,
really,
it's really good.
Because I think people want to get their school year, experienced superintendents want to get their school year started before they start looking for another job. And so this is pretty early for getting applications in during September. So we want to be sure they have an opportunity to feel like they've gotten their work done, and then they can begin looking. And we'll look at you.
Sure. Jeff, if you're out there, do you recall offhand how many applicants we had at our last superintendent search? Are you there, Mr. Mahoney?
Might be
I see his
muted.
name.
Well, maybe not. But
Must
those,
have stepped
are
away.
those- do those numbers look similar to what we got last time? Do you recall? It seems to me that we had a tremendously large number of.
Well, I'll tell you, the pool is shrinking. And I think it would be fair to say in quantity as well as perhaps, not so much quality, but experience. It's more likely that school districts, because of the numbers available, may take somebody without superintendent experience. They may have, maybe they're a deputy superintendent in a large district, and that may be comparable. You may decide that.
Sure.
But I think Wayne would probably echo, and Wayne's done a lot of work at the national level too, as all the end of us baby boomers leave the field, as in many leadership roles. There are fewer and fewer people coming into those roles. And I think the pool is less. Would you, Wayne? Oh, there's your guy.
Oh, hello, Jeff. Do you recall offhand how many-ish candidates we had at our last superintendent search?
There were 30 plus that were originally identified, and 7 candidates were brought forward by our other consultant.
Thank you very much.
And when was that, if I may ask? When was that?
5 years ago?
Was it 5?
7 years ago, maybe?
It might have been.
7 years ago.
I'm sorry?
7 years ago.
7
7.
years ago. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Holy cow. It seemed like it was that long ago.
I can tell you the numbers have went down dramatically.
Yep.
So are there more superintendent positions available than typical following this
Yes,
Yes.
last pandemic year?
I think a combination of.
nationally, that's
of-
true.
And a combination of factors in Wisconsin. What was it, Wayne? over,
I think WASDA has turned over, WASDA is the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators. I think we have turned over 60 or 70 superintendents per year on average for probably the last,
3,
I
4
was
years.
gonna say
maybe.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you consider that we have like 424 superintendents in the state. So,
And that was
Seems like a lot.
the aging of the population, for one.
Yeah.
Perhaps fewer people coming into the profession, and/or then people coming in, and it, a lot, and then it creates a pool with lesser experience.
And just finally, I guess, in terms of the cost structure, I noticed that, you know, you've got the Baker Eubanks third-party background check. Now, is that over and above the initial background check that you folks would do on the candidate pool?
Yeah, our initial is things that we do through HYA, calling perhaps references, or calling people that we believe may know these people,
And Googling.
and Googling and doing all the media checks ourselves. That one is quite sophisticated, and most districts do it only on their finalists.
Court documents, financial documents.
You'll get
those kinds of
everything.
things.
Okay. And just, again, in terms of cost structure, I would imagine you can work with Dr. Anderson on, you know, real numbers, or is there a range that you can give us that, given our past experience working with districts similar to this, it has cost between this and this at the end of the day?
Well, there is a,
I think they put a range in. the
there's
first-
a dollar amount in your proposal. We didn't
Okay.
know if that was public yet or not, so we don't have it posted here. But the entire search and the survey, if it's not costed in the proposal, is a $2,000 item. That's in your proposal, and I can just refer you to the section that has that amount in it. But you should not expect anything beyond what's here, and you will receive an actual contract. It's in section K in the proposal.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have anything else? Well, then I guess we can move on.
Great, thank you.
Forge ahead.
Forge ahead, great.
All right, well, I'm Lori Kimbrell, and I am the lead associate for the Hazard Young Atia Strategic Plan Collaborative. And I want to thank all of you for letting us be here tonight. I'll introduce myself and my colleagues in just a moment. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you to Pat and Sarah for a really thorough, interesting explanation of the HYA search process. So just to begin by giving you a little bit of information about the company before I share the PowerPoint, we are two separate pieces of the same company. And so we have, you heard the really amazing and deep background that Pat and Sarah bring to you with searches, and the strategic planning teams have a very similar educational background, but very, very deep experience with strategic planning in all kinds of school districts. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Well, before I do that, let's do this. Okay, so if you can't see my screen at this point, if somebody could just do a little shout out, but I see it on mine. So awesome, thank you. So again, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll start by introducing myself and sharing a little bit of my background. I am also a career educator. I spent 27 years in K-12 public education, from teacher through superintendent, most of that in the far north suburbs of the Chicago metro area, but again, just almost right to that Wisconsin border. I was so far north. And at this point, I am a tenure track professor at the University of Georgia, and my research is in systemic whole school, whole district improvement, and specifically how we create equitable outcomes for students through effective strategic planning. And so just a little bit about HYA before I let my colleagues introduce themselves. And some of this you heard already, but some of it is specific to the strategic plan division. So the associates that we assign to strategic plans have very, again, extensive experience developing strategic plans that impact student outcomes, right? So we don't develop plans that are lists of things to do with outcomes like create a new curriculum for English language arts in 3rd grade. Now that might be something that is a result of your plan, but what we're looking to help you do is create a plan where we have strategic indicators that tell us that all of those activities that are in place make a difference for the students, because ultimately our schools exist to ensure that all students learn and grow. We have a very customized approach with very flexible timelines to meet your needs. And we continue to be flexible all the way through the process because conditions change and times change. And we've seen that very much over the last 18 months or so. And this one's important. We have experience with districts who require simultaneous strategic planning and executive search. We had a meeting, in fact, the team that you have here tonight, Dr. Sutbeck and Dr. Gibson and I met with an HYA search team this afternoon in a district where we are doing the search and the strategic plan at the same time. And given the turnover in superintendents that's happening nationally right now, there are others that I've got one in Connecticut, same thing. And there are others lined up right behind you in this same situation. So while I'd like to tell you that this is an unusual situation, more and more common, again, just given where we are in the world right now. And the reason that we're different, again, than some other organizations that might help you with this is we have a very clearly defined set of deliverables and outcomes. And those, we're going to talk about those a little bit tonight, and those are all listed in your proposal as well. There's nothing, we don't really leave things to chance and leave to chance who will do what. You know exactly what you're getting and what that plan will include in the end. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over for a second to Dr. Sutbeck and Dr. Gibson to introduce themselves. So your team on site, the people whose faces you will see in person, will be Kim and Lynn. I'm in the background during this whole process, supporting their work. I'm in the Atlanta area right now. So again, I'm doing some of the research in the background and all that support work to make sure that they have everything that they need when they're working with you face-to-face or virtually.
Okay, I will start. Like Lori said, I'm Kim Sutbeck, and I just retired as an assistant superintendent after, I think, 37 years in education. I have had the privilege of traveling all over the United States in many different types of school districts as a military wife. So I've been able to be in the process as far as teaching and with administration in all different types of school districts. I teach full-time right now for Northern, so you'll hear all of us. We are, and it sounds like the two on the executive search have failed miserably with retirement as well. But in my path for teaching, I teach pre-service teachers and do methods courses in special education and with children's literature. And my passion actually is to have that equity lens throughout. So I've been on many projects through NIU looking at social justice and restorative practices and how we prepare our teacher candidates for that as they move into the school districts. With Lynn, we have done many strategic planning sessions with schools. We've also done nonprofits. And so we have a strong passion to make a strong collaborative plan that, like Lori says, knits the goals and objectives and the missions and the vision, all of that together to make a plan that the district can, it's kind of like the blueprint for what they're going to be doing. And it's a plan we really stress very heavily, that it's something that is living and breathing. It's not just something you go through and you do the process and then it kind of sits on the shelf. We work really hard to make sure that it's a living, breathing document. So that's me. I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Lynn Gibson. Like everyone else on the call, I've been a career educator, anywhere from teacher to superintendent. I was a high school computer science and math teacher for 10 years before I went into administration. I recently retired superintendent, and also am a professor, an assistant professor at Northern Illinois University. There I teach aspiring superintendents, principals, as well as our school finance people, as far as finance directors go. So I like all those angles of a school district very much throughout my career, as well as at NIU. I also, about 3 years ago, finished my school business official certification through Northern, actually then. This is an exciting process. As Kim said, we've been doing this for a long time with all different types of organizations, mostly education, but we have worked with some of the community-based organizations. And it's an exciting process to see it all come together and watch what happens by the end of all three phases, because it brings everything together that we've learned, that you've learned, and the plan fits your district. That's exactly what it is. No two plans are alike, and it's definitely geared that way because the process has to follow what needs to happen in your school district. So we're happy to be here and excited about being able to present to you tonight with Lori. So Lori, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you again for the warm welcome.
Okay, so when we think about strategic planning, as I think it was Lynn said, it is a roadmap, but we can't have that roadmap until we know where we are right now. And so at the end of this three-phase process, you will have a clear understanding of where we are today, where we're headed, and the plan then becomes the roadmap for how do we get to the place, from the place we are now to the place that we want to be as defined by our community and by our board. And so the strategic plan process has three phases, and some of this looks a little bit like what you just heard in your executive search process, but it's the purpose is very different. In your executive search, you were looking very specifically for who should the executive of our district be? What characteristics should that person have? What do we need in that leader? In the strategic plan process, we're really looking more broadly at, again, as a district, as a community, where do we want to go? What does success look like for our students? It is a very student-focused process where, again, we're looking to define what should students know and be able to do as a result of graduating from our schools, and how do we get them there? And how do we move our system, our whole system, including our schools and the whole district in this direction? And so again, we have this three-phase process that we'll talk about right now. So the inclusive engagement, now again, some of this is going to sound like, and I know your question is going to be, boy, this sounds a lot like what we did or what we're planning on doing for our superintendent. And some of it is similar, again, but the questions that are asked have a different focus. And so, of course, we start with that kickoff meeting with the board, and we work with you to really customize the process, the timeline, to make sure that we're really meeting your needs. We do collect a wide variety of perception data, again, similar to the superintendent search, but with questions about your system. And so we have individual interviews with the board, likely with your interim superintendent. Cabinet members are usually interviewed as well. And many times also very significant community leaders are identified for individual interviews. And so these interviews, we start with these interviews before we get into the other perception data to really get an understanding from the people with the closest view to what's happening, what do they believe is the situation now and where we want to go? And we use that data then to really formulate the questions and the directions for those focus groups. Just like with the superintendent search, we do them live, we do them virtual. We really work with you to make sure that difficult to reach or underrepresented populations participate in these focus groups. And we do brainstorm with you and work with you and support you to do any one of a number of things, providing transportation to those focus groups, having translators in those groups, having them at places that aren't necessarily school locations that some of your community members are more comfortable coming to. In a district, we were just out at a senior center. We do them in another district I'm working in churches or synagogues, faith-based organizations. So again, we do this combination of having these focus groups in lots of different places with lots of different people, but you drive who those focus groups will be, and we work with you on that. Again, the community survey, and I know survey fatigue is real. It really is. And so we would coordinate, and that's the beauty of working with Hazard Young Atia for both processes. We do this often, and so we can coordinate with one another, with you and with one another, to make sure that our survey isn't going out at the same time and we're not bombarding people with this, but that we have just the right timing. And with the community survey, it's different. There's some similarities, but many differences with the strategic planning survey. We have just spent a lot of time and effort creating an equity section in that survey, and with piloting those questions and making sure that they measure what we want them to measure. And that community survey, the other thing we do there is give you occasional updates about how we're doing with that, because we want to have the most participation possible on that. Because what happens is with our focus groups, some people can't come to focus groups or don't get invited to one of the focus groups, and we need a way for those people to still have a voice, even if they weren't able to come to a focus group. A piece that's unique about the strategic planning process too is that we work with you on an environmental scan, and this is how we tell where we are today. We look at existing student data, not just academic, but social, emotional, culture, climate data, staffing patterns and trends, your financial data, which is why we have a finance person on your team, your previous strategic plan, if you have one, it sounds like you do. And we, again, really take that data snapshot. And the outcome of this is a stakeholder engagement data report. And it's a synthesis of all of the perception data, of all of that data dive that we've done into your existing school data that you have. And we put it together in a cohesive report that is, again, an overview, but also has very specific information. And we do this in a way that it is a public document. And so it's useful for the board and the educators, but it's also useful for the community members who aren't educators and aren't immersed in this every day. They can still pick it up and read it and look at it and understand it pretty easily. And this is really important because it becomes the basis for everything else that we do: the mission, the vision, the core values, your strategic goals and priorities. And those are all developed in the next phase. But again, it's just a really easy to understand, pleasant to look at report that knits all of that data together. So from there, we move into the next phase, and that's where you have a choice here. It's about 50-50. Half the school districts, the school board is the entity that really takes that data and works with it and develops the plan. Other districts, about the other 50%, choose a strategic plan committee with a variety of stakeholders and some board members. So again, we would work with you to determine what works best for you. And we would go through then a series of sessions where we use some collaborative facilitation techniques to really help you determine the vision. So the ideal future state of the district, and that's the where are we going. The portrait of the graduate is really important. It's a subset of the vision, but it tells us again specifically about our students. what should our students know and be able to do upon graduation from McFarland schools? The mission is how we'll work together to achieve that vision, core beliefs, the way in which we will be with each other as we're working on our goals. Strategic goals are typically 3 to 5 broad areas, and then strategic objectives are the actions necessary to really move the district forward towards those goals. So at the end of phase 2, we work through iterations of a draft of a strategic plan. At the end of this phase, you have a strategic plan that is ready to be approved by the board. And so again, the deliverable there is the actual strategic plan. And from there, it's not over, because once you've had a strategic plan, it just can't sit on a shelf and be this thing that you did one time. The power of a strategic plan is in the implementation. And again, this is a place where Hazard Young Atia is very different from others who do this work. So in the proposal that you have, we'll provide some guidance for you in the development of implementation plans, how to identify strategies, metrics, timelines, all those nitty-gritty plans. And this is a phase that happens with your administrators. So now the board has set direction, and the educators and administrators and teachers work together to make those plans to help this come to life. The strategic dashboard is also something that is unique to Hazard Young Atia. We have a dashboard. I'm going to show you a little bit about that in the next slide. It's an interactive platform that is hosted but shows up on your website, and it tells your story. Who are we? What are we about? What are our goals and objectives? How are we measuring those? What are those strategic indicators? And as you're thinking about strategic indicators, we again look at what are the metrics that will really tell us that we've made an impact for our students or for our system. So again, they're not checklists. They're not, have we created a staffing plan? Check. Have we created a curriculum? Check. It is metrics that again tell us that our students are learning and growing at a deep level than they were before. And again, the strategic planning process is, we develop some pretty deep relationships with all of you. This is not we're here for a month and go. This is a pretty long process where we get to know you really well. We get to know your administrators really well, and we continue to help throughout that first year by checking in. Now, just quickly, that the governance dashboard, again, is this really amazing way to keep your plan alive, to keep everyone accountable to this work in an interesting and engaging way. And it really helps us to make sure that the plan is living and breathing, and that we're really working towards reaching these goals with indicators that we all know and we all understand. And again, this is something that before phase 3 is over, we get it set up. We help you administrators understand how to populate it, how to keep it updated, and how to continue to make this what really keeps the plan moving. So again, the timeline is customized and flexible. It's typically these take 4 to 6 months, but we have some right now that we're deliberately taking 8 to 12 months because of some situations in the district. And so we're very flexible on this. And how does the superintendent search impact the timeline? Well, this is as different as every district and every board that goes through this process. So again, we have one right now where the search is starting, and the strategic plan is going to come in after about 2 months of that search. And we have a pretty intricate timeline for how that's going to look, so we don't overwhelm people. I've got one right now where they were both happening absolutely simultaneously. And the community didn't miss a beat with it. And the feedback we have so far is people are feeling good about doing both simultaneously. So, you could do either one first or second. You can do them both at the same time, and we'll work with you to figure out what works best for you. The great news about a strategic plan is it really does set direction and really can be a great entry plan for your superintendent to know that this data has been collected and they're either going to be a part of that plan development or, that they're coming in during that execute phase. Again, it can all work, and we'll work with you to make sure it fits your needs. So again, just a few, we've kept your attention for a long time and we appreciate that. We really do customize these processes. We have a research-based process that we use, but we are here at your service. And we customize at the beginning and during the way to make sure that we're meeting your needs. We are educators and we are researchers at this point in our careers. And so we see school districts across the country. We know what works. We know what the research says works, but more importantly, we know what works in practice, and we can help you look at those initiatives and strategies. We have a very collaborative approach with school boards and teams of administrators. We work hard to match associates with your district. Our associates are not so far away from you. They're within about an hour's drive of you, so that's important to us as well. We really focus on impact and indicators of success rather than checklists. And we, in the end, our plans are living and breathing. Now, one thing before I let you go and have you ask your questions is that strategic plans we develop these deep relationships, these deep collaborative relationships. They take time. And so, we're just really looking forward to spending that time in your district and to collaborating with our partners on the search side so that we are always in step with one another, and to making sure that your district not only maintains the great work that you are known for, but what would it take to be among the best in the nation? And that's what you have the capacity to do. And that's where we want to help you be. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And the three of us are happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions? Christine?
Thank you so much for that everybody, for the thorough presentations. It was really helpful to hear both at the same time. So one of the main reasons why we wanted to hear both is because of both of the processes happening. So, some of the conditions that we have right now, besides being under COVID, is we're a small district. We're a really flat district. Both our Director of Teaching and Learning and Student Services report directly to the superintendent. And we were hopeful that maybe the processes by which you collect data could be done simultaneously so that we're not overtaxing staff, administrators, the board, the community, and so on, because you are going to be going and talking to the same groups. I heard you say that functionally you guys, you work separately. You're doing very different things and that you have instruments that you're validating and so on. At the same time, what I'm hearing the strategic planning team say is you really look at what the district needs. Like you really go into the data and say, these are the areas that we really need to work on. And when I look at the data collection for the superintendents, it's really about what do we want? What are our desired characteristics of a new superintendent? Why can't we work more together? Because I don't want to think about what I want in a superintendent. I want to think about what the district needs in a superintendent. So the data collection, both complementary and together, would be really valuable at the same time for us. So that's a long way of saying that's why we brought you in today together, with that hope that maybe that could happen because of the conditions under which we're working. And I could see value in doing it at the same time and not parallel or sequentially or something different. So I'm sorry, that's a lot of thoughts on my head, but and also just some questions.
Yeah, and I'll start, and then if Pat and Sarah want to add to that, I would really very much welcome it. So I think that would be the advantage of working with Hazard Young Atia for both processes, is that we do have the capacity, but more important, the desire to work together on your behalf to make sure that whatever we're doing results in an effective strategic plan, a great superintendent to lead the district with that plan, and that we've done it in a way that you are not only satisfied with, but thrilled with. And there's no reason that we can't. It's just we would have to figure out what that looks like. And we absolutely have the ability to do that. Now, it would be different, right? If you're like, I'm going to work with, Smith Brothers search firm, that creates a little bit of a problem. But we are the same company, and so we can work together. And Sarah and Pat, I don't know if you want to add.
I think certainly we can work together. I think as a board, there might be some other questions you want to consider. One is the role, the urgency of hiring a new superintendent and being out in the market in a timely fashion. So I think timeline is important probably to both processes. Yes, we do look for desired characteristics, but the engagement phase looks at strengths and challenges of your district as well. We do not, as they say, go back and pull your data, although Sarah and I did pull all your data. It's all public, so we have your data sets. That's how we feel we come to know your district in looking for a match. But that is not part of our work per se, where it would be a foundation for a strategic plan. We certainly can work together. I think two things. One is timing, stress on your community, and frankly, what role you want your new superintendent to play in this process. Would you take the amount of time it would take to perhaps create a strategic plan and then use that as a backdrop for hiring? And when would you be doing that? Or would you, in combination, collect the data that we'd be doing, engage your community, do your survey, et cetera, bring you candidates, at which time you decide what role will they really play in this process? I don't think it's a limitation, but I do think it'll be a factor in your interview.
Well, and that's why I love that all of you are coming with such a strong research base. And so I'm going to ask, and I forgot your last name, the woman who just presented the whole presentation.
Oh, Lori Kimbrell?
Lori Kimball.
Yeah, Dr. Kimbrell. You mentioned that your dissertation's on systemic change. Like, what would you recommend? How do these searches and then like a strategic plan, what would be the best way to do one of those?
Right. So what I would tell you is that, like my colleagues, again, I teach in our doctorate of school improvement program. I work with dissertation students, and as a tenure track professor, I'm responsible for my own research as well. And so my research is in systems improvement. And so, what would I suggest? There is no definitive answer about this must come first, this must come second. There could be some overlap in these processes that we could collaborate on together, but the strategic plan process, I think I heard that in your superintendent search, you'll have 10 focus groups. Well, your strategic plan process has 26 engagement sessions, right? So by definition of the different process, we're going deeper and looking at some different things. So there could be overlap, but I don't think there's replication, nor could we say these are the focus groups that we're all going to use. There will be some divergence within that. So I think timing is a real concern when you're looking for a superintendent, and you want to trust your professionals that know the Wisconsin search market really well to make sure that you're following their guidance about when they can bring the strongest slate to you. Strategic planning can happen before, during, and after that. My recommendation to you is that you do not get yourself too far into the second phase of strategic planning. That's the focus phase, where you're taking all of this data and working on a plan until you have a superintendent, because the superintendent and the board together are the governance team that collaborates and works together to create this plan that ultimately your superintendent will be responsible for. And so in the districts where we're doing this simultaneously, we do wait for the superintendent to be hired to begin the focus phase, so that the superintendent has a voice, is together with you as a team, and is part of the process and has deep, deep buy-in to it. So again, some of the engagement phase can happen before you have a superintendent, but I'm just going to tell you, I wouldn't recommend that you go further than that. And that we defer to our search professionals on their timeline so they can bring you the best candidates.
I would like to just concur with Lori that it's critical to have the new superintendent involved in the strategic planning process. I can tell you that when we are recruiting for applicants, they are going to want to know that the board cares enough about their opinion to be involved in the process of developing something so important as a strategic plan. To arrive with the plan already in place, I think it would limit the talent pool that we could bring to you, because they will go somewhere else where the board cares about their opinion of strategic planning and moving forward with a district that wants their involvement, cares about their opinion. And so, I mean, I think it's just crucial that we get the superintendent in place and have the strategic planning process move forward. Because I don't think you're going to want somebody who's a puppet. And coming in to an already developed strategic plan isn't going to bring you the talent you want.
We probably all can share the positives and some of the war stories, but it is about that relationship. And you know that because you are governance, but this superintendent, either the current one or the one you hire, is going to have to operationalize your plan. And that's huge. And on one note, a superintendent may look at your plan and say, I'm not interested in doing that. Or another candidate may look at a developed plan and say, that's exactly what I want to be doing. But I would agree, it's more likely, I think your success is more dependent on their engagement with you. They will, as great as the plan is, as great as the search process is, they will have to operationalize what you want done.
And I do like the phasing part that Lori talked about. And it could very well be that you could, the first step is your process of getting your new superintendent in place. February, you get the strategic planning moving. And so, or even January, you could move it along faster than that. But I think it's just so important to have a quality candidate know that their new board wants them involved from the beginning.
So that said, in the districts where we're doing this at the same time, I don't know that simultaneous is the word, because we're doing the engage phase. We're gathering the data. And so all of that is possible while you have an interim. And again, in the districts where we're doing it, the interims are in place. But we are stopping there and then waiting for the new superintendent to be named to then begin working with all that data.
Well, thank you all. You thoroughly answered my questions. I really appreciate it.
Anybody else? I've got a couple, I guess. I may be a bit off on my numbers here, a little, slightly, but I believe that somewhere in the 70 to 80% range, community members don't have a connection to the school district. How different is your approach when you're dealing with community members with current connection to the district, whether it be a child, a grandchild, whatever it may be, and those folks who do not have a connection with the district? It would seem to me that they may very well have quite different expectations. How do you deal with that?
So that is a great question, and that is exactly why at that planning meeting, we create with you a list of, we start with the focus groups. Actually, let's move before that even. We talk about who are the community leaders that are so essential to hear from that we conduct an individual interview with them. From there, we talk about who will our focus groups be. And very often we will reserve some focus groups. And this is why we have 26 of those engagement sessions, right? Interviews and focus groups. Community leaders. And community leaders, you know, could be the elected people, but also leaders from your local organizations, your Rotary, your Elks Club, your, you know, food bank, or, you know, whatever the local organizations are. We make sure that we get those folks together in a focus group. Again, depending on the community, I've had focus groups with just a variety of faith-based leaders and, you know, ministers and reverends and all of those, you know, folks that we get in. We just did a strategic plan in a community very much like yours, a suburb of St. Louis, actually, a very high-performing school district, where the numbers are about the same. And so we went literally to the senior center and had a focus group at the senior center. We also took hard copies of the survey because the senior community doesn't want to get online, or, you know, that's just not their deal. So we took hard copies and worked with the district to get that data entered. Again, so we sit and brainstorm with you. Who is it that we're trying to reach? And that's why, again, that we take the time and the depth to really figure out how do we get these people, and we're not done until we have those voices, because we might hear something different from those people. Oh, and another one, taxpayer watchdog groups. We try to make sure we get in the door. People thinking about running for the board in the next election. I've got one in Connecticut right now where we have a focus group of, there's so many people running, focus group of board candidates. So you name it, we figure out how to get them in, but yeah, we can't just be two groups of PTA moms and done.
Sure. Thank you very much. And this is kind of for both groups, and hopefully you didn't cover it and I missed it. How much involvement in either of these processes comes from the students? Do either of your groups actually interview students, and how engaged are they in this process?
We have interviewed students. Again, we'd set up your focus groups, you know, when we meet with you. Districts have used students. We find it best, truthfully, if you do high school students. Sometimes middle school students, but high school students seem to be more able and able to think more concretely.
I guess that's more what I was
Yes.
thinking
And then
about.
you may select one of your response groups in the survey as students. And what we find with that is it takes a few leaders in your high school to promote that.
Right.
And so we work with either, usually like a National Honor Society Student Council, not just those students, but those students who can go out and garner support for taking the survey.
Okay.
It's very similar with strategic planning. We usually have a middle school group and a high school group separately. Again, working with the district right now where we're doing intermediate and middle because they're in the same building. And same, we don't just have the student council or the cheerleaders, the football players come. We really try to get a broad swath of students from, you know.
And I just would like to add on that, like at the actual engage phase, you know, Lynn and I really encourage and counsel boards to make sure that there are students on that planning process, because their voices are so important. And sometimes we're thinking about stuff for them, and then they're all of a sudden wondering what in the world that's not the way they're thinking. Or sometimes it's the opposite. They're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea the board spent this much time thinking about how I'm going to be educated. So we have found in our process that having the student voice is very, very critical throughout the whole process, but especially in the engage phase.
Thank you. And my last is, are you accustomed, your group accustomed to doing both a superintendent search and a strategic plan more or less simultaneously, or is this kind of new territory for you? Or I think I agree completely that we need to get a superintendent in place before we get beyond a certain point in the strategic plan process. Is this something that you're accustomed to?
Sarah and I have not done the HYA. We both have done considerable strategic plans in other settings. We have not done the HYA strategic planning with the HYA search.
Okay.
We have not.
So we have 3 happening that way right now. And part of the issue that I think is happening nationally is for the last 18 months, for good reason, districts didn't engage in strategic planning. And so we have a whole slew of districts whose strategic plans have expired or are about to expire. And we're, that's conflating right now with this culture climate that we have of superintendent departure. And so, again, we have 3 in the mix right now. You would be the 4th, and there are a few more coming up that we have the proposals out there. So it's not blazing a brand new trail. It's unfortunately just the time that we're in right now.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? If not, gosh, thank you very much, all of you. This has been tremendously informative, and we appreciate your coming out and visiting us on relatively short notice.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, and good luck to you in either way and whichever direction you go. So
Thank you.
all the best to you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. I can walk them out if you want to start with Jeff on
Yep,
building subs.
that sounds good. Okay, Mr. Mahoney,
Hello.
the floor is yours.
Well, I guess I might turn the floor back to those that were interested in having this as a discussion item with what questions you might have with regards to our pilot dedicated sub-plan for this coming year.
Can I just make a point? Are we done discussing that?
The HYA?
Yeah, because I would like to just, there's some things, but I guess if you want to, I don't know how you want to handle
Well, why
that.
don't you just hold on, and when Wayne gets back,
Is that permissible? When he comes back?
I think so.
Okay, if that is,
Yeah.
that, yeah, because I
Yeah.
have questions, but I
Absolutely.
didn't really want to ask them while they were here,
Yeah,
so
that's
that's
just fine.
fine. All right, thank you.
Yep.
And Angie, I'm so sorry. Can you turn it up a little bit? I
can't hear him.
My ears are getting old.
I'll try and yell.
I know, and I just feel bad for even asking.
Can you repeat what you said before?
Jeff?
Sure. Is this a better volume?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so my piece here would be that I'm here to answer questions in regards to our dedicated sub pilot that we are embarking on for the first time this year.
Is this the first time we've ever done this? I mean, I know it's been going on in the high school and the middle school for a number of years.
No, that's a preferred sub system.
Okay.
The dedicated sub system, as I sent some information earlier this week, or a couple weeks ago, is that we are embarking on a new pilot project in which we are guaranteeing employment through our subsystem, having a person in each building report each day, every day in each building. That is the first time we're trying that, and that's very unique.
And I just want to make sure I understand. So this is the first time then that a sub has gotten PTO, right? So this is like a benefit of being a dedicated sub?
Correct. So there's a couple unique things. First of all, just a daily sub individual has a certain per diem rate. We have long-term subs that have a per diem rate. So for instance, a person that's on a Family Medical Leave Act will come in and completely take over for the teacher. We're kind of doing something in between that, which is a person that is gonna come to the building every day, and they will be responsible to help out in whatever capacity is available that day. We typically average about 15 to 17 subs on a daily basis. A high day is somewhere between 30 and 35 subs.
And then.
And yes, the PTO is we did do a PTO last spring. Again, we did some COVID related things. This is kind of like I guess a pilot project that's been put in place as if COVID would not be here, but obviously we have a little bit of that still going on.
Okay, and then they are assigned to a specific building, but they have a partner building that they would be asked to go to if there's a need, correct?
Correct. If we had that fortunate situation where there was only one sub needed between two buildings, then they would be asked to go to the partner building. I don't see that occurring. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll have that, but with 213 professional staff and nearly 100 support staff, 10% of your staff typically have some time off. So.
I know kind of what piqued my interest in this was the communication we got from one of our longtime subs here in the district, and his concerns on what appeared to him to be a lesser offer in terms of pay than what he had received previously.
So during the 2020-2021 school year, we paid everybody $210 per day if they were going to be a sub during the pandemic, regardless of years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we are certainly successful as a school district across the county to have subs that were willing to do that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Was there any reason why we couldn't try to work that out where we could try to take into account someone's experience?
And longevity.
Longevity, or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. I feel the individual we're talking about to me is he's done such a tremendous job, and he's brought, again, he is right at that where the rubber hits the road. He's working with those kids, and he's worked with them
Yes.
for 11 years, so.
Yes, we're very fortunate to have this year going into this school year, 142 substitutes in our system, of which we have many that are have many years in the system. So I think the unique thing here is, again, we offer $210 per day for our long-term subs. Those individuals will be producing they'll be producing the grading plans, they'll be working on doing, so if this person's in FMLA, they do the grading, they do the curriculum planning. Our daily rate individuals that come on a as needed basis are at $130, whereas our pilot project for this year is $160 a day, plus the bonus of a one paid time off day for every student contact day, which is, again, unique. So the unique thing, I think, with this process is the fact that each building was able to just reach out and go after their individual that they felt most comfortable with, of which many of them have lots of years of experience, and therefore there was no open process. As I just mentioned a little bit ago, we have 142 active subs in our system, and if we were to probably go and start assigning individual rates, we'd probably have to come up with a new system here of advertising this, versus this was not advertised. This was, each building got to work with their most beholden individual that they've been relying on the last couple of years to have this position with guaranteed number of days.
Go ahead.
Were you going to say something, Bruce?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't see that as being that difficult if you had a 5-year gradient, a 10-year gradient, 15-year gradient. I think you could cover that relatively quickly.
I have was that a question, Bruce?
Well, I mean, is that difficult to do, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, go ahead.
I guess this was the system that we designed for this year's pilot. And if we're to need to be re-examining this for future years, I think that would be the best way to go, is to look at, but again, Bruce, I'd want to have us look at what's our criteria. Previous teaching experience, teaching service in certain areas. I guess there's a broad breadth of opportunities for us to be looking at, and it's not to say that someone's commitment to our school district is not worth the value. And I think that's one of the values that we put on this, was that our buildings were able to work with their most trusted individuals to have a different rate than a daily sub-rate individual, plus have 1 day for every 20 days, which is similar to what our current teachers have.
So I actually have a little bit different slant. I think my intention is the same as yours, Bruce, but I don't think that looking at everyone differently is the way to go with this. That's my personal opinion, once again, not speaking on behalf of the board. So when I think about, if last year they were getting $200 a day as subs in the middle of COVID, what I'm struggling with is dropping them down to $160. And if I do the math correct, and I'm not great at math, but it looks to me like they're maybe making $27,500. And to me, that seems incredibly low for a sub being full-time in our district. Not only are they going to be there every day, but they'll also still be in the middle of COVID. I'm sure there'll be times when there's going to be a few days where teachers are out, and that they'll be the dedicated person. I know they're covering other classes in a second. So I don't look at it as a matter of how long they've been here. I look at it as their role, and that we need to compensate their role better. So my feeling is to personally increase the daily rate because of the extensive role that they're having. And this is a pilot, and I know doing my own pilots and evaluating pilots, you want this pilot to be successful. We should set it up for success and not failure. And for me, the pay rate is an issue, especially if we're thinking of paying them. I mean, my son makes 15, they're making 20 an hour, and he works at Quick Trip. I mean, I just feel like what they're doing is so different. So my feeling is to up the pay, put it somewhere in the middle of a long-term and the temporary type sub. And that would be 30,000 then, 30,900.
So, are the other school districts doing any kind of COVID pay this year? Or has everybody done away with that for this year?
Actually, we were one of the few districts that did a COVID plan, but we were also one of the few districts that were trying to get students in earlier than most.
Okay, and then I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So a regular sub that doesn't have a guarantee, that comes in on any day would make 130, right?
Correct.
And then the dedicated sub would get 160. Now, if you
Correct.
are a dedicated sub for FMLA or a longer period of time, that's when you're expected to do the grading, correct? And create the curriculum?
Grading and lesson planning.
Okay. So these dedicated school subs are not expected to do any of the grading or lesson plans
Correct.
that we're talking about right now?
They're not
And they
expected
will
to.
also be filling in for EAs and special education EAs if those slots are available and a teaching slot is not.
So Jeff, they're not expected to, but it's possible they will, right?
Correct. They are asked to be available for each of the days.
Yep.
Of which, for instance, at Wabisa, we actually have 2 people that are going to split it. At middle school, we have 1 person, and at the high school, there is 1 individual.
Yeah, I
And
always
again,
liken it
they
to,
are not expected to actually have to attend work every day, as long as they plan that out with the administrator.
yeah, I always liken it to they're like firemen who literally, they go all over. And,
Yep.
and I was always amazed. I think the plan, by the way, Jeff, and I don't know if you thought it up, is brilliant. I really like the idea of this kind of building sub who's there, and literally that person is like a fire person running around, working with various faculty members. And they have to really learn who the faculty are, and they have to work with these teachers. They have to, it goes the other way as well. The staff themselves have to trust these individuals, because these people are literally on the spot all the time. I just think they do a remarkable job. And I think it's a brilliant idea that our district kind of thought this out.
I did not think of the idea. In
Okay.
fact, our teachers enjoyed having us go after last year. One thing out of the pandemic was the fact that we had a situation where we made the commitment during a pandemic to go forward. And this is a result of that pandemic. And so, when people look at what is the pay, and we're always compared to, well, why won't you pay as high as Madison? So that was one of the reasons why we went after doing at least almost, their daily rate is 161. So that's why we went after the 160. For the 179 days out of a 260-day contract.
So you offered this dedicated sub option to multiple people.
No, the principals had interactions with the people that have been serving their buildings the longest, so that they could go after individuals that have been here and have extra years of
Right.
experience.
Right, so there's multiple people, though, in different schools in the district who have been offered this position, correct?
Yes.
Because has been brought up because of a specific concern that was voiced. But what I'm asking is there 6 individuals or whatever that have been offered the same role?
Yes, the elementary offered to, CEPS offered to the individual that they've been relying on for well over 10 years. Wabisa chose to look at splitting it up between an individual that's been with us about 5 years and then one of our retirees, teacher retiree as well. And then the middle school, again, someone that's been with us about 5-6 years. And then the high school with an individual that has been over 10 years with the school district, off and on for substitute needs and also other needs.
Okay. And were any other concerns?
I think I just have to reiterate, there's 142 individuals that are within the system, and many of them are also retired teachers. And I guess our goal with this pilot was to allow the buildings to search out and go after the person that has been most dedicated to their facility and helpful to their facility so that they could have a rate that's different than the daily $130 rate.
So I think when we're making this decision, I just want everyone to make sure that I understand that there's specific thoughts about specific people who have been offered this role, but we should think about it as a whole, not an individual when we're talking about
Yeah,
this.
no, I totally agree.
So-
I think all of them should be paid more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just about.
That's what I was gonna ask.
But that's fine, I just don't want
Yeah,
to be
no.
talking about a specific
No,
individual
I-
when we
that's
make
why-
these
right.
decisions.
Even though that's what
Yeah.
Right.
kind of brought this up.
But, you know, at 131 versus 160, what's the math on that, somebody? 29, right?
Jeff, can you share about, do you have close at hand about how much money we have allocated in the budget to substitute teacher pay?
So we usually average somewhere about $250,000 to $280,000 in a non-pandemic year of sub pay. Between our salary and benefit on these 4 positions, that will eat up about 1/3 of the budget. And, you know, I think we rarely ever have a day where we don't need a sub. So we usually average at least 10 to 12 people every day that we need.
Do they have any fringe benefits? Or is it the $160 per day, or is there any benefits with that?
So that's where we're adding in the 1 day per every 20 student days that they would work as a added bonus for also doing this work above and beyond. And that's something we don't offer our long-term subs or our short-term subs. Again, this is a pilot. We're kind of a little unique compared to the other school districts that we're trying this, and I think we'll be successful. And I don't disagree on the idea that, you know, the rates can be challenging. But as you see, I think I have a document in front of you. We are certainly leading the way a bit in many of these areas. So I think we've been very responsive to having really good substitutes that want to be with us. And so we have been indexing across the board higher and higher.
But can I once again point out that there's a difference between like being a short-term sub, and I have a part-time job where I'm filling in a few days, than a full-time. So their full-time pay is $27,500. If they have a family, that's not even the poverty level. So I just want to be clear that what we're saying is, we want
Yeah,
them there
I think
full-time.
Christine, I think the important piece there, again, this is 179 days out of 260 working days. I think we have to, I don't want to come across as the Grinch here, but we also have to be mindful of, you know, the number of days, and that these are specific days and they are not required days. The
Right.
offer on the table is
Right.
that
Right, but they don't get paid then, so it's not a salary, they don't get paid that day, which is fine.
Yep.
So if they don't come, still don't get the salary, it's not like, it's a salary.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so, and.
That's
what you're
a
saying-
choice.
Yeah, right, but if we want, well, it's okay, I think it's just a difference and, okay.
And remember, most substitutes, or many substitutes, are retired teachers. So this is not their only income. They're probably getting an income from their retirement. And this is what their choice is, so they're not totally retired, is to come back some. This is not how they're funding their life,
But
paying their mortgage.
That's only one of them, actually. Is any of them retired teachers? One, half of a person.
Well, one out of the 4 buildings, in this case, yes, we have a retired teacher. But out of our 142 retirees that are active, I would say about every 7 or 8 is a retired teacher, whether our school district or another school district.
And then you can manage a second job, but we're expecting them to be here 5 days a week. Which then, if you are gonna have a second job, you're doing it at night and the weekends, so that's a little bit different. I mean, I don't think we should assume because they're retired, they shouldn't make good money that pays them for what they're doing. I have a value problem with that.
My financial consideration is that your budget can sustain any priority, all right, that's first thing. But whatever when you reallocate money from one to another, you have to take it somewhere else. So if you decide that this is a reallocation, however many dollars ends up being reallocated, it has to come from somewhere. There is no empty spot.
So it's no more than 13,000 if we gave them all a pay bump. If I'm doing the math correctly, and I'm using my calculator, I promise. And it's not as if the 1/3, when you say it's being eaten up, that just means we're not paying, 1/3 we're paying them, just not other subs, so.
Did you come about the numbers that we have pretty much based upon all these others that you're showing as well? And we're just looking to place ourselves in the top or upper part of our, I assume this is countywide average probably?
Yes, so we're trying to, as usual, trying to compete with Verona, Oregon, Stoughton, Middleton, Sun Prairie, Monona Grove, Wanakee, DeForest, and Madison. So we are placing ourselves in a position that we feel that we can compete, whether it's for our regular ed daily or special ed daily, or our long-term subs, or again, we're trying this new pilot dedicated sub project, which is new in the county, and I'm sure we have plenty of districts that are not going to be very happy with us.
What are you thinking, Arlen?
Well, this isn't a full-time job. It's a supplemental job.
Not if they're working 5 days, 9 months a year.
You know, a lot of people work a lot of jobs 5 days in a row. A lot of people do. And if you look at this, this brings us that we're in the ball game. We're not out of the ball game. We have a good environment here.
In terms of our rate, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a very good environment here. Not saying that other places don't have good environments, but some places don't have as well as we do, and we do support people. I'm a union guy. I get it. I stick up for a lot of stuff, but sometimes we have to look at what we're at here. I think that the attempt is being made is a respectable attempt. This is a first shot out of the blocks with something. If it needs to be massaged, we can work on it and see where it's massaged. But, you know, I think this is a respectable way to look at it. That's just my opinion. I mean, it isn't like, do we have to be at the top? Not necessarily. Do we have to be in the 10%? Maybe, or close to it, you know? But if you look at this, I think it's a kind of respectful way of handling and doing business. I mean, Wayne is right. The money has to come from somewhere, okay? We're not sitting around here like we're sitting on bags of money that we don't know what the hell to do with. You know? And it's just the way the world is. And we're pretty efficient on just about everything we do. I don't care where you want to look. We do a pretty good job maximizing what we have to do. And most of the time, we're very respectful to people that come in here. I see positives with that. We have a good environment. And I think, you know, that says something for somebody that wants to come and fill in and take on a challenge, you know, is you want to have a good environment. So if this is our first shot out of the blocks, I would say let's try it and see how we do. And if we need to massage it at a later time or next year or however it's laid out, we have our numbers guy that can tell us what the issues are. But right now, we're just kind of, I don't know. I think, I know, but I don't think you can, I think you have a good faith number coming at you, and if we need to massage it, it'll show us, or we'll look at it, and we can always come back and revisit. This is on demand too, supply and demand also. So it's kind of, I think we're in the game. That's my opinion.
I just have a question. Do the 20 days, the paid time off, do they have to be consecutive? How
So
does that work?
If they have 20 student days in a row, that are their planned days, then they would earn the one paid time off day, which is, in a sense, this last year, at the end of the year, we had a few people that ended up earning that, and again, that only had like a half year, and they were actually paid at the end 3 or 4 extra days of work time. But they can use it in a different way. They can take an actual day off and get paid in the middle of the year, or they can rack, pack, and stack them to the end of the year, and they could end up with 10 or 11, about 10 days of 11 days, I think, here. 10 and a half to 11 days of paid time extra at the end of the fiscal year.
Well, I think one of the things that you need to look at is that your normal rate is $130 per day, which is competitive with your neighboring areas. What you now is you're giving guarantee that you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get a call early in the morning. We're guaranteeing you that you can come in every day in some position. And so you not only have the guarantee that you know you have a position, we're going to give you an extra dollar amount for that. So you have the security of knowing you're going to be called every day, plus you have a $30 increase over the ones where it's sporadic. So I see this as a benefit, because one, most subs are on an on-call basis. In other words, you call in sick in the morning, you don't feel well, we need to find a sub for you. Here, these individuals, they already know that they are guaranteed a position every day. What their position is, we don't know, but they know they're guaranteed a position.
And that's, the last comment I was just going to make. And I wanted to say, I think it's fantastic. We're trying this out. I think it's a brilliant idea. But I just will tell you, from 40 years of teaching, there are subs and then there are subs. And I will tell you, these individuals who are, they're well-known, they know the kids, they know the staff, they are worth their weight in gold. They're not like your everyday sub. And I just know as a teacher, oftentimes, I would rather be on my deathbed than have someone come in there because I cared that much about my classes.
Yeah.
And when I had an individual like this, for a teacher, that was just such a relief to know that my kids, my students, the kids I loved, were gonna be in good hands, and someone I could trust. And a lot of it changed after Act 10, and Jeff, you did such a wonderful job explaining to me that phone call I made with you, that I didn't understand, because our subsystem was just fantastic, and then it just got kind of torn apart. It was really not Act 10 as much as it was the state legislature, not allowing teachers to go back and becoming subs. So that's why I like this plan. It's just wonderful, but there are different levels of subs, and that's why these principals reach out to these individuals. They know these people are really worth their weight in gold. And I guess in some ways I kind of agree with what Christine is saying. I do understand exactly what Arlen's saying, and Dr. Anderson, same thing. I mean, yeah, at some point, you give, you got to take something else. And it may be that where we're at. And Arlen, you called it massaging it, and maybe we'll have to come back and address it in the future. And that may be where we're at, because I think it's a great plan.
Yeah, I like the plan too. I'm struggling with the idea that everywhere else is doing it, so we should do it here too. I always struggle with that, because contextually, what I'm hearing, when you do the math, basically these subs are making $16 an hour. We want the best in our classroom, right? We know, we've had teachers leave because they can't afford to live in McFarland. The cost of living here is different than some of these other places. So why are we comparing? Why aren't we more in front of recognizing what teachers do? That's the only way we're going to change this system. And I think this is a really good example of paying people for what they're worth, for what they are providing, so they don't have to worry about it. So I do struggle with, well, if everyone's doing it, so should we? Well, we'll always be in the middle then. We'll never be on top. We'll never excel, because we're always looking to compare ourselves with others. So we'll be in the middle, we'll be average, and that'll work. Anyway, I struggle with that. I think contextually, we need to look at where do we want to be when we do things.
So can I clarify one piece?
Sure.
We're looking at $20 per hour, correct?
Yes.
I think you said $16.77 an hour?
Well, that's because we were comparing it to what the traditional subs are getting, $131. So now, yes, $20, which is $27.5.
Okay. I guess I might have misunderstood.
Yeah, no. I was just saying, if we're saying, well, that's better then. But, yeah. Well, I'd be happy to make a motion, and we'll see where we go.
Kate, what are you thinking? What I'm hearing is that we all love the plan, we love the idea of the plan, we love that we're out front of this as opposed to the other districts in our community. The issue is dollar amount.
So I think that this is a pilot program. They're getting some benefits that the other subs aren't getting. I completely understand what you're saying, and I hear you guys, and I want you to know that, but I also.
I think the other subs are getting it too, though, right, Jeff? Yeah.
Are the other subs getting the PTO days? They're not, just the dedicated subs.
Just dedicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's benefits to being a dedicated sub in addition to the $30 extra a day that they're getting. And the benefit is PTO days, and then they get up to 5 days of training or professional development. So there are some additional things that they get from being a dedicated sub, and while it's not always monetary as far as, their daily rate, they're being offered something different than the daily subs. And so, to me, I think that this is a good starting point, and again, it might need to be changed, but I don't necessarily think that we should be going up on the rate for, like, the dedicated subs versus everybody else, essentially.
Okay. And based on what I'm looking at here, we are at or near the top in terms of the other districts. And I do agree with Christine. It's always nice to have those comparables out there. And I'm so sick and tired of that word after selling my house, that it is a useful piece of data to use. It being a pilot project, and we always have the opportunity to change these things if we feel it's absolutely necessary to do so before the end of this year. And based on what Kate just brought up, that there are additional perks to being a dedicated sub. My initial feeling is to probably vote in favor of this pilot project, the way Jeff has written it up. I don't know if any further discussion.
Now, Jeff,
Are you-
hasn't that already occurred? I mean,
Yeah, I think it's
if the board leaves it the way it's at, it doesn't need any action.
Well, yeah. Well,
That's
I'd
what I
like to
thought.
make a motion then. I make a motion that we increase it to $180 for the building pay.
Increase to 180?
Yes, which is a difference of $13,000 if they all took every day, and they're not going to work every day, we know that. And that, we do have funds from places that we can cover this. We have WEVA funds.
Are you making the motion for just for an increase for everybody or just
No,
the
Just
building?
the building
Okay.
subs, 180 an hour. Last year, they got 200 to do it. I don't think it's fair to go down to 160 this year. I think 180 would be a way to split the difference.
180 a day.
Correct. For the the building assigned subs, I know some of them are splitting the position, so there might be 5. It's a difference of $13,000. I know our WEVA budget can cover it. I feel strongly about this. So I make the motion to move it to 180.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of increasing the daily pay for dedicated subs from $160 a day to $180 a day, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Me.
I didn't, how did we do that?
3-2.
3-2.
2-3.
Yeah.
2-3.
Okay. Okay, so this pilot project will proceed as given to us here. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Since Jeff's on the call, could you go to the last item, the budget changes? Since
Yes.
He's right there and available.
Yep.
So these were budget changes that were noted by our auditors during our preliminary audit work last week. One is a shifting of about $17,000 to some different line items. And the other one was the fact that while we recorded at our last time we had you guys approve the budget, we approved the budget for, I don't have the amount in front of me, just over $260,000 for an expenditure side of the CIG grant, but we did not assign a revenue amount. So those are items that were noted by our audit last week.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Jeff? Administration recommends approval of the attached budget changes for the 2021 school year. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Kate, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Bruce, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now we need to talk about the potential for an additional school board meeting to hear.
It'd be Dan Murad from WASB.
Yep.
If that's your decision. He could not make it tonight, which I guess I'm glad.
Well, I think Bruce wanted to bring up some things to another.
No, I think we can bring it up then. That's fine. But I definitely want to bring up, just, well, I mean, it's up to you guys.
Bruce,
There'll be somebody else here presenting.
Yeah, and I could do it after they leave, but I mean, I could do it quickly, I think.
Well, will there be a motion to make a decision that night?
Well, I mean, we could put it that way. I mean, we could do it for discussion and possible action. Dan couldn't do it tonight, because he was at another district. Dan Nearat, who used to be superintendent in Madison, so I've known him. Both the ladies that presented tonight, I've known for a long time. They were excellent superintendents, so, and I've known them for a while. I didn't know anybody on the strategic planning one, but I knew these two extremely well. Dan wanted me to convey to you that if you did decide to go forward with both, he is the one who would handle both strategic planning and superintendent search for WASB. He has put aside, if you want to hear him, if you want to meet with him, September 13th. So you've already had 4 Mondays in a row, so I know that you continue to keep asking you to come back on Mondays. But if you wanted to hear him, he has put that date aside. Your normal would have been Labor Day, which nobody's meeting, and nobody's recommending to meet. But if you did want to meet him, you could have a chance to at least compare, and then have a discussion, and then determine what you might want to do. And then your next regular meeting would be the 20th.
So we don't have a meeting on the 30th, correct?
No.
So next week, there's no meeting, right?
No.
And then the following is Labor Day, and then
Yep.
this would be.
Yeah, so it's a couple of weeks out. What do you think? Do we feel like we want to bring them in and listen to them?
I'd like to have
I
some.
think it's always good to get a second.
Compare.
I
Yeah.
don't see why not.
Yeah.
So the motion would actually be to hold a special board meeting on Monday, September 13th at 7 PM in the boardroom to hear a presentation on strategic planning and superintendent search from the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. Do I have a motion? Or I guess I just did make one.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Um,
Just-
I liked that we're able to add in a few things too, because if we're gonna go that long without having one, I feel like some things might
Yep.
come up.
Yep.
Short.
I would like to have time to discuss it without those people being here. That's the
Sure.
only thing. I felt like today,
Oh, I
and
understand.
I'll just point blank, I strongly disagree. I think the strategic plan should come first,
Yeah,
and then the principal.
yeah.
And I
Or then
welcome
the-
you to try to convince me why I'm wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know, but I really would like to know your opinion on that,
You
too.
know, actually, like I said, I'm good friends with both these.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And I
And,
told them that we do disagree on this one part, so.
yeah, so I think we need time to discuss as opposed to just asking them questions. We need
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think once
Absolutely.
I do think once we hear this presentation, we need to sit down, whether
Yes.
it be open session, closed session, working session, something to just
Mhm.
Yeah,
bounce our
thank you.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you.
It's very
That-
difficult
that's
with,
exactly right.
with people in the room,
It's
you
impossible.
know, to
You
ask
don't do
the
that.
sort of questions and make the
And they
comments.
wouldn't want to be here.
No,
You
no,
don't- you
and
don't
that's
want
why
to, yeah.
you'd wait, yeah.
But
Okay.
then again, I will point out that then this board meeting is September 13th. Like, we really need to
Yeah, we've
talk
gotta
probably
go.
after this
Yes,
presentation.
because we want to get
I
started.
think we want to get started.
You got it.
But figuring out whether to do one or the other first is important. You know,
Yeah.
they're advocating to get the soup in place and then proceed with the strategic plan, and we're looking at completely flipping that whole
Well,
process.
Some of us,
Tell
I'd
me,
like to
Greg,
hear why.
you were a salesman. Do you
Yes.
not lay it all on the table to see what you could get?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Now, I did talk with both of them as we left, and they said since they have never done the process together jointly,
That surprised me a little bit, I guess,
they
when I
said
asked.
that though they work for the same firm, different arms, what their recommendation was is, make sure you ask them when they've said that they have done 4 districts simultaneously, that you push them on that to determine really how it's going. And remember, they both work for HYA, but in different branches.
I would be concerned, as Christine was, in duplication of efforts, maybe in data collection.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, just what Christine said, people aren't gonna, if you push out one survey and then you push out another survey 2 or 3 weeks, they're not gonna give you the responses that you want. People are just gonna be sick of participating in focus groups and answering surveys.
Plus, if we have the year like we did, who knows what we're surveying?
Right.
Surveying on top of the survey.
Right.
So, no, I'm really curious to see how
And it was-
Dr. Neerad will handle it
Right,
through
and I would say
WASP.
after you listen to them, I mean, you know, I have my own opinions on the route I think you should go, but I'll wait until after you've listened to the people you want to listen to.
But I also heard them say that they're doing it differently. So if we said, if we really liked them and said, nope, we want to do strategic planning first, they would do it. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they're not going to give up business
Yeah.
for that. So
Yeah.
I think wherever we decide on that will be.
So will that be part of the plan when we've already decided on the 13th? Are we going to then have some kind of a working session or something?
Like,
I think it's necessary.
I think it's
what do you
absolutely.
guys think about, like, how quickly, I'm just looking at the superintendent search timeline, and
Yeah.
if we wait to make a decision on which route we want to take and how we want to do it, then that just postpones.
Well, you do have a meeting on the 20th, so you could listen on the 13th, give a chance to think, ask questions. I could give you my thoughts.
Maybe we
You
could
could
make
have a
before
work
the
session on
20th.
the 20th where it was an action item, so then you'd only wait 1 week after that.
I just think we got to get going as soon as we can.
We can't be using time we don't have.
Yeah.
And it just based on the timeline, even their draft timeline, we're into doing stuff when we're still figuring out.
Would you guys be opposed to just doing a work session after the presentation on the 13th?
Not at all.
Is that too long of a?
The same night?
Yeah.
I think
Or we
it's a
could
great
do a work
idea.
session another
No. Well,
time,
you-
but instead of waiting, I just think we
I
have to make
think-
some decisions.
I agree. I think flexibility is key, though. Let's see what happens with school opening, you know, like the 13th and the 20th, just kind of see.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're doing the 13th. We could do it that night, or if we had to, we could do it the 20th.
Does anybody mind doing it on the 13th if that's
No,
what we come up
No.
with?
I'd like to.
As long
I
as the
think-
agenda
I
is
think things are
lighter.
fresh,
Yeah,
and we can.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because
That's true.
sometimes then things get cut, like the 20th might have a lot of other agenda items, and then you
Well,
get lost.
It's possible there's going to be extra stuff added to
They're
that.
probably,
Oh, it's possible.
Possible.
So.
More than
you
likely.
concur?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that. We
That's
can.
fine.
Would you like,
Jeff's
now,
raising his hand.
Yes, Jeff?
Hi, Jen.
So, from a historical perspective, I know it was 7 years ago. The superintendent search, similar to other school districts across the state, we did not do our bid packets until September and October for Hazard Young or WASB. And we selected someone in October, and we got busy in November, December. So just from a perspective standpoint, about 7 years ago.
So we're doing a strategic plan too.
Yeah, so there's
And there's COVID.
I'm just
a lot of work to be done.
stating about the superintendent search.
And any decision we make tonight may be moot, based on what happens with the health department. So, we've got a motion to hold a special meeting on the 13th. I believe we have a second as
Yeah.
well. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. So, September 13th at 7 o'clock. See y'all here.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And Bruce, that was what you wanted to bring up.
I think we have to make.
We have to adjourn the meeting.
Yes, okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. We are adjourned.